So, y'all, what's going on? I am calling this the In the Mix Webisode. I have so many people that I know that are amazing in different fields that I know could bring value. And I always am just like, dang, if my people could just know more about this. And so I want to start doing some interviews monthly, or even a little bit more often. I have some clients as well. So just so that you can get exposed to new and great people. And I thought there's nobody else better to kick this off with than the number one issue that people have, which is meal prepping. So Dr. Tremaine Jones, I'm going to go to you for your last name because I do not like mispronouncing last names.
It's absolutely fine. A Fetabor.
I would have destroyed that. I would have destroyed that. A Fetabor. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. She's well known as Dr. Flava. She is a highly sought after, remember 2008, we were trying to get this together, wellness advocate and foodie enthusiast. She is the CEO of the healthy all natural seasoning line, Dr. Flava Spices. Her mission is to help others transform the way they eat and think to create a healthier life before the prescription, by teaching practical principles in the areas of eating, mindset, and advocate for their well-being. She is a 2004 graduate of the widely respected HBCU, Xavier University of Louisiana. That's where all those Creole seasonings are coming from. You're like, I know how to do this. So her work and her expertise have been featured on several media outlets, including nationally syndicated radio and magazines, Get Up Morning with Erica Campbell and Riff, the Rashad Ritchie Show, Mornings with Michael, Rolling Out Magazine. She's a healthy living contributor, Sheen Magazine, Voyage ATL, South Fulton Lifestyle Magazine. Let me get a sip of water because there's more. It's a lot. This is awesome. And more. And she has been the recipient of the following award grants: the 2020 recipient of Beyonce, BeyGood grant, and Facebook. So that is so freaking exciting. You've got a lot going on. So let's start off with just kind of some more getting to know yous, because you've had a very interesting transition that I would definitely love to talk more about. So where did you grow up? Did you grow up in New Orleans?
No. So actually, I grew up born in the Bronx, New York, lived there for 5 years of my life. And I claim Lincoln, New Jersey, because that's where I spent the majority of my life. And I am a Jersey girl, East Coast girl.
Okay. Yeah. My guy grew up in the Bronx. And so it's like, but you don't say it the same way. Like anytime he says New York, he has a regular voice, and then it's like New York and the Bronx. And I'm like, oh my God, what just happened here? So you said it like the Bronx. Okay, I get that.
I guess it depends on how long you lived there. You know, the New Yorkers, they have a whole different swag about them, right?
Yes, which I already told him. I was like, dude, if I would have known you were from New York, that probably wouldn't have happened, because I have this whole storyline about guys from New York.
Right. I understand.
All right. So one thing that I love, especially if I know people that are much younger, especially if they're in their 20s, I'm like, oh my God, we have to sit down. I have to have a conversation. Let me tell you everything that I know as a person my age to a person your age, to try and help them out. So we're going to have this, like, if you had a 18-year-old you, or, an 18-year-old close friend or family member, what's something that you would, with the knowledge you have now, what's some piece of advice that you would give them?
Well, I would definitely say, just people who know me and my personality, I was always pretty mature. At the age of 18, I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to go to Xavier University in New Orleans. I knew I wanted to be in the medical field. I was actually pre-med at first, and I changed to pharmacy, but I was taught and groomed in doing things in excellence. So that has always been with me. What I would tell my 18-year-old self is, remember who you are, because who you are now, don't allow the no's and the disappointments and the failures to keep you from going. Because when you're 18, you're fearless. When you're in your late 30s and 40s, you start doubting yourself. Things change. Of course, when I was 18, there was no social media. So the only people you could really look up to were people on television, right? And that was it. But now in this age, I would definitely just tell my 18-year-old self is you got it. You are a winner. You are created for this, and always trust that and believe in that. Keep that inside of you.
Oh, that like that gave me actual goosebumps. That is awesome. That's awesome. I like that. So that
Mhm.
could apply to y'all, like that, those words of advice that can apply to us at 28, 38, 48. So I would definitely really take on and embody all of that. So you were talking about some people to look up to and how, you know, the world of social media, you could have more than what we did when we were growing up. So
Right.
who are your top three most influential people in your life and how have they impacted you?
First and foremost is Jesus, God, because if you really, especially now the age that I am, I grew up, I'm a PK, I'm a preacher's kid. So I grew up in church, having that relationship with him, understanding his principles, that has been the biggest thing to guide my life. And especially now in this age and not being, not, um, how can I say this? I believe that if I understand his principles and follow those directives, because I always believe in seeking ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added unto you. So I first have that relationship with God. So that's number one. He is my greatest example. Number two would be my mother, who came from corporate, went into having her own business, and that was always a model for me because she did great in that world as well as in the entrepreneur world. And that has always been a great influence for me. That's also where I got my cooking from too, right? From my mother and my grandmother. Those are the two people that really influenced me in that way because I was able to see women who could be smart, educated, but yet knew how to throw down in the kitchen, yet knew how to have a family, grow a family, and be able to be all of those things. So I would definitely say my mother and my grandmother. And then the third person, I would say, I'm trying to think. I don't really know. Who do I look up to? I don't really know. I can't even think of another person. I would just say my mother, my grandmother, and God. Those are like my top three. Yes.
So, now, do you have a business person like now that you look up to?
It's like a multiple different people. So this is not necessarily business. It's more like motivation and inspiration. I love Les Brown. That's one of my go-tos. I like Eric Thomas. Um, in the gospel world, my pastor, Pastor Jamal Bryant, just to feed your soul, because I feel like if you start with your soul first, everything else is going to come into place. And I think those things have been most helpful for me.
I would agree with that for sure. Like
Mhm.
when it's in here, it kind of radiates inside out. Because I've definitely spent time trying to work on the outside without necessarily
Right.
going in, especially with business stuff. And it's definitely an inside out kind of game.
It
Definitely.
is. It is.
So as we kind of transition some, I definitely want to. So you talked about how you went to pharmacy school. Like
Mhm.
what made you switch from medical school into pharmacy school?
So I love telling this story. I have to give you a little bit more back. So back in the day, so I have my actual book. So back in the day, there was a magazine called Jet. It was like this size. Remember Jet magazine?
I do.
So
I'm a 70s baby, so I
right.
definitely
So
know Chat Magazine.
my counselor came to me and was like, Tremaine, there's this school in New Orleans called Xavier University, and they're number one for producing the number one graduates into getting into medical school. And I was like, yes, I have to go here. But then I realized, I was like, I don't like blood. I don't like cutting people. This is not going to work. But I was like, I still want to do something in the healthcare area because I love helping people. So one of my teachers at Xavier was like, well, did you consider pharmacy school? So this goes back to my 18-year-old self, 19-year-old self. I changed my major, didn't apply to any other pharmacy school but Xavier. I was like, God, I'm here. I'm changing my major. I had to go to summer school to catch up because I was pre-med. I had to catch up on my chemistry because when you're biology, it's more biology focused. So I was like, okay, mom, switching my major. And I did that. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Because I've always been pretty headstrong. When I believe that I'm going to do something, I do it. And so I switched my major and it was a great decision, something I actually love. to do because I always wanted to help people. And a lot of people do pharmacy just for the money. A lot of people that I met, they just look at it as money, but you can make money anywhere, right? You don't even have to go to school for 6 years to make six figures, especially now we're seeing with these young children, they're coming out being TikTok superstars and they're not like, they're still young. So if you do something just for money, then that's not what you should be doing. You have to do something where you have the passion, you have the drive, and you have something that you care about that's bigger than you. Because if you're just doing something for money, money can go. So definitely, it still allowed me to do something that I was passionate about.
Awesome. And we kind of have it's interesting. We have a similar thing because my path was going down the medical field as well, but more as a physician assistant because I'm like, I need time to spend the money I'm going to make. And I knew most
Right.
doctors I knew were working all the time. And it was kind of, we had a different verge off, but like for me, it was just kind of like, okay, I can be more proactive than reactive, which got me into the fitness field. And,
Right.
but yeah, I definitely understand what you mean with having the biology and then you got to get all them chemistries going. So totally get that. That's awesome. But then still, that was my thing as well. I want to help people. And
Right.
so even now we're both doing that. And it's great that we can do it without, like you said, you don't even need the 6 years or anything like that. So
Right.
how did Dr. Flava Spices come about?
Well, Dr. Flava Spices was created so in 2016, but it wasn't launched until 2017. So
Okay.
basically, throughout my pharmacist career, I always was doing a side hustle, looking for some entrepreneur route. People couldn't figure it out. They're like, but you're a pharmacist. But I'm like, I want to do something else too, right? And I'm like, I just always understood that entrepreneurship was really the way to go. So upon my journey, because I love to cook, I was always cooking all the time. And I was like, well, why not make money from cooking, right? Because I was just always bringing food to people, bringing it to work, letting people eat. And so I was like, I'm going to start catering. So I started doing that. It was successful. And then I switched it up a little bit more, made it more healthier. It was called 320 Catering. And it was all about cooking and creating these delicious meals with a healthier twist. And people just always loved the way my food tasted. So one day I was in the kitchen. I was like, husband, this is taking too much work to like make it taste good. And so I started looking at all the things that I was using. I never could use one thing. I was using so many different like herbs and spices along with like traditional seasonings, but I could never use too much because it was too salty or too spicy. And I was like, I love to cook, so this is too much work. So I just started out with 2 seasonings, and that was part of the journey. The other part of it was my pharmacist side kicked in. And I was just like, you know what? Whenever I'm talking to patients, I found that I would always go to the food. Food was like such a big conversation when they would talk to me like, oh, I need something for energy. I'm like, what are you eating? Because they wanted me just to tell them to take a vitamin. I'm like, no. I'm like, I'd rather you drink maybe like a shot of wheatgrass or something like that, drink a smoothie, because you're probably, based on what you're telling me, you're eating a lot of simple carbs, and it's just making you tired and lethargic. When you're eating too many carbs, you're not getting those vitamins. So all of that came together, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to help myself. I'm going to help people to have something that's pretty much all there in one without them having to mix all this stuff. And I'm going to help people to be healthier because that was my journey too. And we'll talk about that later. But those two worlds came together, and it started out as Christmas gifts for friends and family. I had 2. Back then, I just posted the other day, what was it called? Fly seasoning. It wasn't even called Dr. Flava Spices. And how we met through Sean Thomas. That was someone who I spoke to, and me and her had a session, like a strategy session, and we worked together, and Dr. Flava Spices was created. And I started creating more and more flavors. Like I create all of my formulas. I write them out. I test them out, and they were formulated. So started out with 2, had a total of 13. Now I think it's 8 maybe. I think I have 8 available right now because I pulled some back. So now I have 8, but I have created a total of 13.
Okay. And I can definitely, I love to cook. And it's funny that you had a catering business because I get asked all the time, like, ooh, will you meal prep for me? Would you cook for me? And I was like,
I did that too.
nah.
I meal prep too.
No. And God bless you on that one, because I did it once for a friend of mine's girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the most stressful week. I did it for 1 week. No, I did it for 2 weeks. The most stressful week. And I don't have any experience doing that. So it was just like, I'm like, I don't love cooking anymore. And so that was like a wrap. I was like, never will I ever. And then with the spice blends, I love putting together seasonings as well. I have a whole like
Mm-hmm.
shelf filled with different types of herbs and seasonings. So I totally get that. That's awesome.
Right. Well, we
So
take the thinking out of cooking. That's what
yes,
Dr. Flavor does. Takes the
yes.
thinking out of cooking for you.
Now, going back to like, okay, so you had 13, you kind of pulled away from 8. And I'm assuming that was kind of like a lesson that was in that. So, what has been some other lessons that your business has kind of taught you that you might not have expected? And I would also love to know why it went from 13 to 8.
Right. Well, the 13 that I had, based it's so funny. So this is always my analogy. I'm like, I love MAC makeup, right? And I was like, MAC has never called me and say, "Hey, Tremaine, we're getting rid of this color." I was like, I love this color, but in business is based on numbers, right? And so I look at my numbers and I see what's moving, what's not moving. And it's funny because people are like, I love this flavor. I'm like, I understand, but before I get rid of anything, I like have a blowout sale. Like, you better grab it because this is it, right?
Yeah.
And it's not saying that it'll never come back again. I decided to make some of them seasonal, but I just looked at the numbers to see what did well and what did not do well. And that's how I made that decision, and based it on what people really gravitate towards and what they love. So that's important in business, especially when you start out and it's like your baby and you want to, but you have to really, I have grown because before it was just like, let me just offer them everything, but I'm not gonna offer things that people are not really gravitating towards because it's just a waste. Then you have to throw out ingredients and things of that nature. So for me, as I've grown in business, it's all about giving people what they need, giving people what people want, and then go on with that, right? And so I want to show you these two. I was just like, are people gonna get them? I started a no salt line, which is in the pack that you're gonna give to someone. The garlic, herb, and onion pepper. People are like, oh my goodness, this is so good. And I was a little hesitant. Like, are people going to really buy it? But I was discussing with a cardiologist and asked him, I said, okay, so as a cardiologist, do you tell your patients to have no salt? Because some people think that my regular seasons, they'll say, oh, her seasonings are no salt. I'm like, they do have salt. It's just lower salt. These actually have no salt, like no salt at all. And he said, yes. There's some people where I really have to have them have no salt. So I said, okay, because I would get a few people emailing me like, oh, can you let me know when you're going to do no salt? And I created it in 2000. I did a lot in 2020. Like the pandemic, I know was terrible, but the pandemic for me really helped my business out so much. I actually got more creative. I pivoted. I created the no salt. I created the adobo, which is really good because most adobos have like 320 to 440 milligrams. Mine only has 85, and it is so delicious. I created the no salt line. I have a sweet potato pie, but that's seasonal. The sweet potato pie and the onion pepper and the garlic herb. So I just believe that giving people what they need, and the pharmacist side of me, what is the number one thing that I always saw? High blood pressure, diabetes, especially in the African American community. And February is Heart Health Month. So, not only is it Black History Month, not only is it Valentine's Day, but it's Heart Health Month or Heart Awareness Month. And I think that it's so important because the spices are going to help people. Meal prep. Meal prep is something that's important. And to me, I just believe that meal prep is like the number one thing that you can do for yourself to start a healthier life. You don't have to go to the doctor to learn how to meal prep, right?
Couple things with what you're talking about with your no salt line. Now, a couple questions with that. Is it really like no salt, or is there a salt substitute?
No salt substitute, herbs and spices. Because
Okay, that's
let me
perfect.
tell you, and it tastes better than Mrs. Dash. I'm just telling you, like the reviews, that's another thing I added in my business.
Yes.
So, we have to automate. Sometimes we want to do everything on our own, and I switch platforms. So Now I'm on Shopify, which makes it a lot easier. And I have an app that sends out to people after they purchase to get those reviews, right? Because trying to get reviews can be very difficult, right?
Yes.
And I've been getting like just within this week, people are like, I tried the no salt and I thought it was going to be flavorless, but it was so good. People love it. Now I eat salt, but I do use my no salt like in everything in my, as I call it, flavor layering. And it just adds that extra flavor because sometimes you think I need more salt. They just sometimes needs a little bit more extra flavor. And so whether or not you want it for no salt purposes, garlic, herb, and onion pepper is just good as a flavor layering. You can't go wrong with adding these. Like I made some gumbo today. I shook some garlic herb, some onion pepper. I seasoned my shrimp with my Creole. And the chicken I did with some Cajun and sauteed it with onions and bell peppers and celery and cooked that down and made a roux. It's so delicious. And I was like, I want a little extra, and I shook some of this on there.
And I never knew it was called flavor layering because I do that as well. Like, because I put salt to just kind of season, especially if I'm using proteins. But then everything else, I'm like, you can't even tell the protein because I am just throwing all of the different herbs and spices on there for flavor. Right. The other thing that's really interesting about what you said, I've done a little bit of research. I've done some speaking events during Black History Month. And one I did last year was just on our food stuff with folks in the African American community. And one thing that I came up with that came up in that research, what I didn't know is that African Americans, actually, we have a sensitivity, like we're more sensitive to sodium. There's something in our genes that make us super sensitive to sodium. Because I'm like, why are we getting all this high blood pressure and diabetes? It's because we have something that makes us even more sensitive to those things. So to have a no salt line is huge. But then what I did notice was how low sodium your other lines, like your other seasonings are, because that's always where I tell people, buy your own things, make your own seasoning blends. People are like, I don't have time for that. And then, before, like I would say, okay, Mrs. Dash, you know what I mean? But sometimes people want the salt added in there, just not like 200 milligrams per teaspoon type of deal. So I love that about your seasoning line as well. So you have because we talked about it in your bio, just some of your features. I had to take a sip of water because there's been so many. So you were recently featured in Essence. And you also won the BeyGood grant, like Beyonce grant, which is so freaking cool. So I want to know, how did that impact your business? How has that impacted your life? Just because those are two big features.
Yeah, they are. So the Essence was like, OMG. I was like, so let me tell you what is so great. So you have to speak, and this is one of the things I'm working towards in my own business. So I have 2 pages on Instagram. One is just for the spices, and then one is me, Dr. Flava PharmD, because like you said in my bio, it's also about mindset, right? And so I help people to transform not just the way you're eating, but your mindset, and not just mindset just about your food, but the way you think about your health and the way you think about a lot of things. I've always said I wanted to be in Essence. I was like, I should be in Essence. Why am I not? I'm like, here I am. I'm like, why am I not in Essence? Okay. And so I was like, I'm going to be in Essence. This is how I speak to myself. These are the conversations that Tremaine has with Dr. Flava. So I believe in it. And I said it, and I was like, I am going to be in Essence. I was like, I should be in Essence. And I was like, and so basically I talked to I'm so sorry. It was a couple of years ago. I was at the Super Bowl event, and it was a publicist there, and me and her stayed in contact. And she just explained to me, she was like, you know what? She was like, a lot of people think you need a publicist, but she said, basically you pitch yourself and you have to believe in yourself, right? And a lot of my stuff happens in the DMs on Instagram. I will DM people. I'm like, who did this? Who's this person? Let me contact them, right? And that's how a lot of things that I have gotten, or I'll just send them things that I'm doing. And so this publicist, she told me basically, like, if you want to be featured in these different things, you pitch them. That's what a publicist does. They just have the relationships with these people. But you have to believe in yourself and have something that is relevant to talk about.
Yes.
The Flava Spices was very relevant. I had a BeyGood grant. It made sense. And the day that this writer put it out was on Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving. It just made sense, right?
Yes.
Because this is the biggest cooking time of the year. So basically, to any entrepreneur, my advice to you is when you have to believe in what you're doing, know what's relevant, right? In the culture or what is going on so that you can put yourself and be in those places to be seen. That article has helped me in so many ways because I knew that was gonna be another step to help me to just kind of bring more people to know about what I'm doing. Because sometimes, it's hard. Like people like you saying all these things about me, but sometimes I'm looking at myself like, well, why I should have this by now, or I should have that. But then it's like, who are you comparing yourself to? Compare yourself to yourself, not, where I am. And I know that I'm a lot better than where I was a few years ago. And if I could tell, I know I kind of went off, but if I could tell anybody anything is like, believe in what you're doing, keep going, plant those seeds because when you're planting a seed, you never know. You can't dig underneath the dirt to see if it's growing. You have to wait for it to come out. If you dig underneath it and try to look, you're going to kill the seed, right? So we don't want any premature blessings. We want it to be fully grown and developed. So the essence was a big, big thing. And I was so excited about that. My goal is to have more stuff with Essence because I believe that there's some other areas in Essence that I need to be a part of. So I'm excited about what the future holds in that area. And then the BeyGood grant, like I said, during the pandemic, right? It was terrible, but it was great too for certain businesses, and it helped to elevate me. My husband came home and was like, Beyonce has a grant. I was like, for real? And it went in and it kind of stuck in there. I said, okay. And then I was on Instagram, you know how we scroll. And my Pastor Jamal Bryant, was like, tonight is the last night I need for you to fill out this grant for BeyGood. So I went on the website, and if anybody is beautiful, if you're not on Hello Alice, helloalice.com is where all these grants are. Like there are gazillions of grants constantly. Helloalice.com. So basically, the NAACP partnered with Beyonce's BeyGood organization, and I applied for it. My brothers, the Black Coffee Company, hey, they're here in Atlanta. They were in the first round. I was in the second round. And it was exciting because basically you have to have a video. So I always encourage people, always have a video about what you're doing, what your business is about. So it was a video. The application was really simple because at that time they realized the pandemic brought light to so many things. Failure in our healthcare system and the fact that Black businesses don't have access to capital, and a lot of Black businesses were failing. So they said, hey, let's do something. And that was amazing. So I applied for it. This was November. Was it? No. I found out in November. I applied for it in October, and I was up working. That night, me and my husband, I was discouraged. I was like, husband, I feel like I'm just trying so hard. And I was just like, I'm actually trying to help people, and I just don't feel like my business is where it should be. So he went to sleep, and I was up on the computer, and I saw this pop up come on saying, congratulations. I was like, wait, is this real? I was like, wait, what? I was like, is this real? And it was like 2:30 in the morning, and I called them the next day because I'm a Jersey person. We don't be trusting people. So I called. I was like, "Is this real?" I was like, "Hello," and she was like, "Yes, it's real." And that's how I found out. So that was exciting, and it helped the business a lot. I was able to. I used some of the funds to get Dr. Flava Spices trademark, so it officially was registered with the USPTO like 3 weeks ago. And I did that. Of course, it helped me to buy like a lot more supplies all at once in bulk, help just keep the business running, because when you're a small business, you're constantly recycling and putting that money back into the business. So it really helped with that. I was able to like pay for like all certifications and everything for like the whole year. It just really helped out so much tremendously. And then it helped to bring more people to my business because it's still on Beyonce's site. So if you go to Beyonce.com, it is still on there under her Black Parade, and it's all the businesses that have won.
Oh, that is so awesome. That is so awesome. Yeah. And you're right. Cause like same thing for me, pandemic wise, like it was horrible, but it was I feel like it was like the slowing down that was absolutely necessary. And for me, it helped me to definitely realize the dream of going 100% virtual. It's something that was going to happen anyway. Like I was already going to do it, but I had a lot of clients that weren't really on board. And I'm like, well, I'm going to travel. Like I had all my passport, I had global entry, clear, like everything. And it was like, I think I was going to start up. I was doing some traveling because I also work with other fitness companies as their food coach. So I was traveling there. And then I was like, okay, at this point, I'm going to go abroad. And I wanted to be virtual. And yeah, well, we know my virtual traveling my traveling part didn't happen, but it definitely, made this happen, which is another level. And working on the inside, the mindset and all of that, I do that with my clients every day. But to work on it myself in a deeper way was definitely helpful and has just kind of worked it. And I mean, like, I've definitely been out of the country and traveling this year, which is, I mean, I don't think it would have happened in the same way with the same success if 2020 didn't happen.
Well, let me tell you this. I hate going to the gym. My coach is virtual. That I love it. I don't have to waste the time to go to the gym. So that's like an hour in travel, right?
Correct.
So and then you spend an hour at the gym, maybe an hour and a half. So now like 2 hours of your day is gone. I can log right in. I love it. I think that every fitness coach should be virtual. If you want to go in, that's extra. But if you can, because it's great. And now it helped me in my business. I pivoted. I started teaching cooking classes. These cooking classes are all over, right? All over the United States. And it's so wonderful. And with companies, I come in and teach, healthy living classes and things of that nature. So the pandemic, it's how you see things, right? The pandemic opened up. If you were smart and you looked at ways that you could pivot, it was a game changer for a lot of people. Some people, maybe they didn't see it that way. And I'm not gonna lie, I struggled. I had 2 kids here. I had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old here virtually learning. And well, the 2-year-old wasn't virtually learning, but the 5-year-old. And it was just like that going on, not leaving out the house and all of those different dynamics. But all of that made me stronger. All of it let me know that you can do this. And so instead of focusing on the problem, focus on the solution and keep it moving.
Absolutely. And that was kind of how it went because, I was talking to some clients because I made the transition. Wow. Also from doing mostly fitness to doing mostly nutrition. And so like when I was talking to some clients when I was still doing the fitness side of things, and they're like, no, I don't think this will work for me. And then like once everything kind of shut down, they're like, so about that virtual thing you were doing. I have a couple clients that are still fitness and and they love it now. So it opened, I think, people's minds up to different ways of doing things and learning things also. So you also have a nonprofit. Tell me a little bit more about that. And then we'll definitely move on to some meal prepping strategy.
Okay, awesome. So it's not my nonprofit. I work with the nonprofit.
Oh, gotcha.
So I work with a nonprofit and other organizations as a minority health specialist, all things that relate to health, teaching cooking classes. And this year I added on something else. I told you how Dr. Trey and Dr. Flava talk. It's like, you should be doing this. Okay, try it, girl. And so I thought about, I was like, aren't there companies that need what I have? Churches, don't they need what I have? And that's the thing, like big companies have a whole team to think about these things, right? But sometimes, cancel Netflix and chill and really think about who needs what I have? Like, what is it that I can offer to this world? Because you have a gift, right? And people are going to receive Tasha differently than they're going to receive Dr. Flava. There is an audience for us all. So that's what I do right now. And I'm looking, I work with various other companies as well. So but this particular company, I really, really enjoy because I get a chance to work with different kids and I love teaching them because I always tell them cooking is essential, right? And once you understand, I don't, sometimes people are like, well, when kids should be able to eat whatever they want to eat, but it's like, why learn to do something bad and unlearn it when you get older? Like teach them now.
That's
even though they need
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, so even though they may not gain weight per se, because we just associate everything with aesthetics, not like what's on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like teach them now, let them understand how do you build a plate? What should you be looking for? Understand how to read your nutrition fact label. Even if you don't understand everything, there are some key things that you should be looking for, right? Because like if you're in the store, you're just throwing stuff in. Sometimes I will like, oh, I want to buy this barbecue sauce, and then I'm like, oh, then I put it back because I look at the ingredients.
Exactly. And that's a conversation I have with my folks too, because part of what I love with what I do is that generational change. Because, I'm working with their parents usually. And I'm like, man, to work with their parents. And then that also, their parents are cooking things that their children are just like, yo, this is healthy. Like, this is amazing, because it's showing them a different way of healthy. Because for me, like I work with folks who want healthy to also be very decadent and indulgent. And
Right.
so like when they're seeing some of those things, they're like, this is healthy. And I'm like, now you're changing the way that your children they see
Mhm.
healthy eating and healthy living. And then they don't have to speak to some version of me when they're older. So it kind of goes exactly along with what you're saying, like teach them now. And I always encourage the parents I work with, bring your kids into the kitchen with you, have them help you with the meal prep, and so that they know what goes into this. And yeah, they experience a different way of eating, and especially
Absolutely.
referencing that plate. So I love that. I feel like it kind of creates generational change. So y'all,
Exactly.
we are going to talk a little bit about meal prepping. So that is one of the biggest components of my business. One, it's nutrition coaching, mindset coaching. It's kind of like everything. I like to call it like health transformation, because I
Right.
can talk about fitness, even though I don't do fitness. But one of the main things that I am constantly talking about, and within mine, I also do meal planning with them and then go over ways of meal prepping. But meal prepping and meal planning is, of course, some of the difficult things that people have, issues with, and especially with the prep, because they feel like it takes so long and everything like that. So some of the things that I work with my folks in teaching them is really to get an idea of their meal prep personality. And I call it that because everyone thinks that meal prepping is, I got to cook the same thing. They think Instagram, those perfectly portioned containers, and it's the exact same thing every day. And they're like, because when I work with them, they're like, I can't eat the same thing every day. And I'm like, whoa, no one said you had to eat the same thing every day. I don't like eating the same thing every day. So I'm like, that's not meal planning or meal prepping. And we'll stay focused on meal prepping. But I'm like, that's not what it is. You got to figure out what your personality is. That's one way of doing it, planning, cooking everything like on a Sunday. Then there's another way of doing it where you cook on Sunday, and a lot of people cook on Wednesdays or Thursdays. And
That's
then
my plan.
that's yours? Okay. And then there's another
Mhm.
way of doing it, which is what I like to do, because I do like to cook meals fresh every day, is that you prep it and then you're cooking fresh. So what that can mean is that you have to make sure, especially if you're cooking with animal proteins, that it is in the way that can be the quickest to cook possible. If you have really thick chicken breasts, cutting them in half, flattening them out, dicing them, slicing them, shredding them, that kind of thing, because it makes it easier to cook. Fish is typically pretty quick. And with the meal prepping, you're putting things in a marinade already, you're seasoning it, and then you got a 3-day window on this, because you do need to cook it pretty quick.
Right.
But you can package everything in glass containers, get your vegetables seasoned, get the freaking chopping out of the way, because that's what usually takes the longest, if anything.
Right.
And then all you have to do is just throw that together. And when you do that last way, it could take you maybe 10 minutes to get a fresh meal out if it's structured. And then with the other two, it really is about I like to create flow sheets with my folks. So figure
Mhm.
out some of those sides, what's going to take the longest, and all of that. So I'm curious. One, well, I know that you love to cook too. So that's also a thing. For people that don't like to cook, I have another method for them with meal prepping that involves more things that are already ready for them, or using some of their restaurants as a guide. Because I have a couple folks, I have some clients that are like, I'm not cooking, or you get one day out of me. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I need to make it work for them, because I'm very much about meeting people where they are.
Right.
So tell me, what is your meal prep process? So you do the 2 times.
Well, I'm saying that because I literally can, I cook very fast. My husband is like impressed. Like I cook in like 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. Make in multi because this is the thing. I have multiple things going on at the same time. So I'm like, your typical stove has 4 burners. Try to use 2 or 3 of them at a time, right? And
Hey.
that's gonna help you to create these meals. So we're big seafood, and the reason is because it's so quick to cook. I will cook maybe salmon and have that for 2 days. Cook brown rice. So I feel like it's meal prep is easy because I'm like protein, complex carb, vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
Done. So, and what I started doing, because I had to stop fooling myself, I kept buying all this fresh stuff and it was spoiling. So now I go to Whole Foods and I get their frozen vegetables. They have this one I like, the Mediterranean style. So it has zucchini, squash, bell peppers, onions. I think we have some green beans in there. It takes like 5 to 6 minutes to cook. I put my garlic herb on there, saute it, and then I'll add a little bit of maybe original everything to it. I have my vegetable. I'll cook like my salmon and have the brown rice. The rice or the quinoa will last. And then I just create different proteins because I do like my food fresh. So I'll probably eat the salmon for 2 days. Last night I had like some fajita steak meat and I did that. And I took some lettuce. Let me tell you, so people think they need dressing. I get the shredded romaine and I cut up some Roma tomatoes. I shook this garlic herb on there, some lime juice, and it was dressing in the tomato. So it was almost like and cilantro. So I was like a little pico de gallo kind of sort of,
Yes.
but that was my salad. And then I ate the steak fajita meat and it was so good, right?
I've been
And so
thinking
basically
about
I
that
tried,
too.
hmm,
With seasoning the vegetables, definitely. And
yes.
seasoning your salads, because then you don't need, like you were just saying, as much dressing. It's huge.
Right. And I put a little sprinkle of grapeseed oil. Like I take the cap. So typically I use a cap to kind of reference because a tablespoon is a serving. So I always use a cap. So it's less than a serving because you really don't need a lot. Like I need to do these side by side meals. I'm like, why does everybody think you have to cook salmon in butter or all this oil? I use very little just to kind of so it doesn't stick but blacken, but you don't really need all of that, right? So that's the mindset shift that I had to teach people because it's like when you watch Instagram, you think like, oh, for food to taste good, it has to be all of this, and that's not the case.
Exactly, exactly. So, what are your favorite kinds of meals to cook? You've kind of run the gamut there just in that little conversation. I'm like, oh, okay, so we got the
So
gumbo, and now we
sugar,
got fajita.
right? So we eat pretty much. I can eat the same thing every day. This is the beauty of where Dr. Flava Spices comes in. You season it different, so it tastes different. So
Yes.
like adobo is like Taco Tuesday night flavor. I had what's not out anymore. Garlic ginger lime is like my Asian flair. So I will use garlic ginger lime on some salmon and then take a little water and a little soy sauce and some orange and mix it up. Now you got a little sauce and put it on there. That's a different meal, but it's still the same salmon, right? Um, and we eat, what else do we eat? Pretty much I can eat the same vegetables. I'm okay with that. And as far as carbs, it's either brown rice or white rice because my husband's from Ghana, but I'll only eat a little bit. And that's pretty much it. So I pretty much keep it the same. Now, when I fall off, I love tacos, but I was just like, oh my gosh, these tacos, this corn is just not the corn. Like, as soon as I start eating corn, I do swell. Like, I
Okay.
will swell. So I can't really eat a lot of it, even though I like corn tortillas, but corn to me is just, it's just not.
How do you balance cooking healthy meals? I mean, of course, Dr. Flava Spices helps you out a ton, but with your busy schedule, do you meal plan once a week, or how do you balance the cooking with all of that? Do you use freezer meals? You're laughing at me, so that's definitely a no. How do you
I
do?
am I go with the flow. It's like I cook what I feel. But see, that's why I think it's important what you do because you know your clients. Because I naturally can cook and like I can be stuff can be frozen. My husband's like, I want to eat something. I'm like, okay. I take my frozen shrimp. You can cook frozen shrimp. I rinse them off. But if you cover them, they will cook and cook them low and they will still taste really, really good. So one
Absolutely.
day he's like, I want something that tastes like a restaurant. So I made shrimp scampi. Instead of using butter, I use grapeseed oil. I use my Nola twist, which is a garlic herb that has salt. And then I use some more basil. and put on there, let it cook down. And then I took some potatoes, but because potatoes are so big, if you slice them up and boil them, they get soft really fast. And so I did that. And then I had some frozen vegetables and cooked that. And it was done in like 20 minutes. And he was like, "You cooked all of that?" I was like, "Yeah." So for me, I go with the flow, only because it's a natural gift for me. But the seasonings help, and that's what makes it, because I don't have to think about it. It's not like I have to be like, "Oh my gosh, I have to cut up this and I have to do that." I did this. Now you can elevate your meal, because I do like the fresh garlic and the onions and the peppers. But if you're just like, "I just want something good," my seasonings are going to help, because they're really packed with different herbs and spices: coriander, garlic, thyme, oregano, rosemary. That's not all in one, but just for example, and like lemon, and the citrus helps. I love fresh lime juice. You can put fresh lime juice at the end of your meal, and just, it's like bam, because the acid, if you watch cooking shows, they're like, "Did you add an acid?" Acids help to elevate and bring the flavor out, and I love it.
Yes, yes. Now I'm going to ask you something that's kind of like, so you have 2 children.
Yes.
Okay. Now this is going to be like, which child is your favorite? But what is your favorite spice blend to use? Which one is like your favorite? One, just one. I'm gonna make it super hard.
Original.
Okay, it really is. Okay, got it. So it's that good.
Original is your trusty staple. Everything. Everything. I mean, eggs. I don't even like eggs, but when you scramble eggs, put that on there. Now, this shows where I'm from, maybe, possibly. I put ketchup on my eggs.
Oh my God, that's my mom. Yeah. I'm like,
Just a little bit, not like a lot, but and then with the original and the ketchup, it's so good. But I'm not a big sauce person, so like, I went out to eat the other day, and I was like, "I didn't know you guys were gonna toss my salad and all of this stuff." So I'm not a big sauce person. I just like a little bit, So definitely original everything, because you can put it on popcorn, like I said, eggs. You can put it on vegetables. The Cajun and the Nola is more like a blacken. If you don't have the Cajun, the Creole and the Nola, Creole and Nola and original is like your Italian meat sauce. So if you're gonna make use, I use ground turkey. So ground turkey requires some flavor. So I use Nola, original, and Creole, and that's how I get that more Italian flavor for my spaghetti sauce. And then for like a more fiesta flair, I use adobo and Southwest. For Southwest, I took that out. Onion, pepper, garlic, herb. I put any flavor. You can put that on anything, and that's gonna just be really, really good. That's that flavor layer, because it's no salt.
yeah.
And then the Creole lemon pepper with the original. You can use Creole lemon pepper by itself, but mix it with the original, either on salmon or chicken. It's so good. I make kale chips, and I use Creole lemon pepper.
Oh my
So
goodness.
good. And I make spinach chips. I use the Nola twist, and I do this all in my air fryer.
Oh wow. I love my air fryer literally died yesterday. Well,
Mine died too.
What is this? In the middle of me making freaking falafel.
Oh.
I only got one batch of the falafel out, and it died. And I was just like I am heartbroken, but we're going to be leaving the country for a little bit. So it's kind of like, it doesn't make sense to get another one now, but I am just like, air fryer was my best
I just got a new one. I had to get one from Costco, because we cook everything. Dessert. My daughter, she makes desserts in there, and you can reheat food inside of your air fryer.
Yeah, I'm very sad.
I just want to throw this in. So I do want people to understand. So one of the biggest things, because it is Heart Health Month, I want people to understand why eating a lower sodium diet is so important, and especially for our community, because we are usually predisposed, it's hereditary, is because the more salt that's in our body, the more water. It creates a more volume in the body. So that means that it takes more pressure for it to get through the blood vessels or the arteries, and that's how it increases our blood pressure. So think about if you have a straw and you're trying to put maybe 2 mLs of water, but now you're trying to put a whole cup of water through it all at the same time. It's going to take a little bit longer. It's going to create more force and pressure. And that's why eating a high sodium diet is going to cause you to have high blood pressure. And then that's why a lot of times people get the retention in their like legs and different places or around their heart. And when that fluid is all around the heart, the heart is a muscle. it's trying to pump, you're putting more pressure, and it's just overload on the body. So it's all about having increased volume in the body, and the more salt and water kind of go hand in hand. Like, this is bad. I used to do this when I was little. God forgive me. But there would be these little snails or slugs, and you put salt on them, and all of the liquid would come out. That was the science, I guess, in me. I used to be like, oh, that is so cool, right? And so, yeah. So think about that, salt and water. If you sit in Epsom salt, why do we do it? To pull the fluid away from our body, because the water is going to draw towards the salt. So just be mindful, and that's why it's so important. If you're not cooking at home, 70% of the salt that we're intaking is from processed foods, eating out. I think me and you had this conversation about Chick-fil-A one time.
Oh yeah.
I quoted this: you eat one meal at Chick-fil-A, if you eat the Chick-fil-A sandwich, that's 1,400 milligrams of sodium.
Yeah.
You're pretty much almost done for the day. You're supposed to have like a teaspoon, 2,300 milligrams, but now they're saying maybe more people should go down to more like 1,600 milligrams a day.
I recommend a 15, 16 for regardless of ethnicity, but definitely for, us darker hued, black, brown, our Indian brothers and sisters are in that same ball game as well as our Latino brothers and sisters. So that's why I say darker hued, definitely lower sodium. So I'm usually like, don't even think about going over like 15 on most days.
Well, one chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A is 1,400 milligrams of sodium. So you're pretty much done for the day. And if you think about most people, we're eating out, breakfast and lunch, possibly dinner, we're eating at home. So pretty much by the time you get home. So that's why making meal prep easy, diagnosing I want to call them your patients, but diagnosing their meal prep tendencies. This is going to help them to create a healthier habit. And so I'm grateful that you had me come on so that I can collaborate with you, because the spices are going to help, and it just makes sense. And I'm excited about what you're doing. I'm wishing abundance and overflow for you, that I want to keep calling them patients. That's the pharmacist.
That's what you do. That's what you say, my patients.
Your clients. That your clients will be healthy and whole. That's what my shirt says.
Yes.
Healthy.
I love that.
Healthy and whole. And that is something that I believe in, and that is something that I believe for your clients too. But what do you have to do? You have to do the work. You can say it. That's the mindset shift, but you have to also do the work.
Absolutely. And it's funny because mine is healthy, happy, and hot. That's why I always tell them, I'm like, I want you to be healthy, happy, and hot. I
love it.
Just all of that. So thank you so much. I am so grateful that you came on. We were able to do this. What do you have coming up? What is it that you're excited about? What is it that, if you want to offer anything, or where can we find you? All of that.
Awesome. Well, you can follow me here on Facebook at Dr. Flava PharmD, and that's PHARMD. Also on Instagram. For my Dr. Flava Spices page on Instagram, it's Dr. Flava Spices. You can follow me there. And right now, it is Black History Month. Dr. Flava Spices 5 years will be next month. Technically, I guess, I created it. I say March. But nevertheless, it is Black History Month, and I am making Black her story, okay? You guys are helping me out so very much to let more people know about my spices. So you're going to use BLK HERSTOR 15, Black BLK her HER story 15, and you're going to get an additional 15%. The entire store is already on sale, so I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about, and you can go to drflavaspices.com. I'm excited about having the spices in some other places. Right now, you can find us here in Atlanta at the Black Coffee Company. If you're eating some food around Atlanta, that burger spot, they use our spices as well. So look for us to be in some more markets. I'm excited about that. And partnering with more people. That is the word this year, partnerships, because sometimes when you're a solopreneur, you're doing everything on your own. And a lot of times you'll see people like, you need a team. But when the timing is right and when everything works out, it's going to work together. But right now, there are some amazing people, including yourself, that are there, and we're in that same space. And when we collaborate, we make magic. So thank you so much
You
for
are
having me
welcome.
come
And
on. I love what you're doing.
thank you so much for taking the time. And I'm just so grateful that we were able to do this. I'll be doing these at least once a month for the In the Mix webisode. So thank you for being my very first person.
Thank
All right,
you. I
y'all.
appreciate you.
Thank
Have a
you.
wonderful day.
Bye.